we do here is go back, 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 back. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
I could be lying, you could be hiding to see what's behind these closed doors. But I promise you, I'll always be yours. I'll always be yours.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the last Pedalshift Live of 2021. Let me turn down this music courtesy of Otis McDonald. If you ever were listening to any of my older videos, all of that came from Otis McDonald. Kind of a cool cat. Like his music. All right, we are all on the mic now, fully and totally and completely. Not a ton of folks in the room right now, but I thought I would give folks a little bit of a chance to come and join. Thank you for joining. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to start recording the audio side of things as well. If you have never been to a Pedalshift Live before, well, first of all, I should introduce myself. Hello, I'm Tim Mooney. I am your humble host, and I have been doing this for more than a minute, the podcast at least, and I've been sprinkling in some live shows here and there occasionally, and maybe a little bit less so since this whole, global pandemic thing happened. But I'm super happy to be back. I realized as I was closing out the end of the year and kind of, doing the editorial calendar and all of that I hadn't done one since April. And April in a pandemic year is about 18,000 months. So it's like it was a different time zone, time of year. Can you tell I'm not used to the live thing very much anymore? On this episode, we are going to be recording, as usual, a brand new episode of the Pedalshift Project. So you get to watch me stumble through all of this. You get to see the actual sausage making of podcasting. It's not pretty. That's why I don't do it very often. But we were going to be doing a couple of things tonight. Number one, I am going to be talking about my brand new tour. I have a new tour that is all lined up for the most part. Normally when I do tour announcements, they're slightly more locked in. This one, as I'll discuss when we flick the switch and go into the recording of the actual podcast, this one's a little different. I've got some open questions on it, but we're going to be doing the announcement tonight on it. Also, we are going to do some Ask Me Anything. So one thing that I would encourage you all to do who are in the room is to feel free to say hello, first of all. I'm super excited that you're all here. And let me know where you're coming from. That would be kind of cool. And if you do have questions, I will put you first in line. You will get the head of the class kind of situation when it comes to this whole thing. So when I do the Ask Me Anything, make sure that you throw your questions in the chat box. I haven't checked email in more than a minute. I probably should have done that because I have a variety of questions that have come in since I put out the call for this. So your questions come first, and then questions from the rest of the crew who have sent them in. One of the things that I like to do is I like to tell folks what I'm drinking ahead of time. Tonight I am drinking, I think this is my favorite West Virginia IPA. This is from Big Timber. First of all, the can. I mean, can you get over the can? It's the Big Timber IPA. It is that the name of the brewery? I really should know this. Anyways, I'm a big fan of this one, and I'm putting it into a beer cozy that I got from my colleagues in the Dallas and Houston office. We had our holiday party last night, and since they couldn't be with us in the DC side of things, they sent us gifts, and one of them was a Y'all beer cozy. So I'm super excited to put a West Virginia beer inside a Texas beer cozy. and drink very little of this as I talk. I realize now the mistake I just made. I think every single live show that I've ever done, I talk a big game about being able to drink things, and I get to drink very little of it. So I actually should not have opened this beer, just between you and me. But I'm going to take a sip now. And the reason why I don't drink a lot is because, as you can just tell, it's not very thrilling podcasting. It's not very thrilling YouTube content either. Dave Fletcher, hello. Good evening, sir. Dave is from Hollywood, Florida, and a major contributor to the live shows and to the Pedalshift Society of Memory Serves as well. Thank you, Dave. We are going to probably do a little bit more banter. Actually, we could just get rolling, to be perfectly honest. Start recording the podcast. As I mentioned, this is going to be episode number 266 of the podcast. It's going to be for next week's edition of the show. So you get to experience all the fumbles and foibles and these kind of intros like I'm doing right now. Those will not be part of the show. And then we'll kind of hang out maybe a little bit afterwards, depending on how things are going with the crew that ends up joining us tonight. It's a holiday season. You see my lights up. I know that this is also kind of a crazy time of year for folks. Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time is not super friendly for my European listeners. I believe for my Aussie listeners, my Kiwi listeners, I think that they can occasionally make this show, but this is really more for the US-based things because it's all US-centric here. Patrick Murtaugh. Howdy, Tim. Pat from PA. Hello, sir. Good evening and good morning if you're joining us somewhere in the morning hours. So, one of the fun things about this is that, as I mentioned, you get to experience the full production of the podcast. One of the things that you learn in the live episodes of the show is that I do not actually put in the music. I don't do that live and in person. I actually do that in post. So, when I do the intro, you're used to hearing the classic quality Jason Kent penned classic America, the theme of the show over. And of course, I put that in post, so you don't get to hear that tonight. Also, I think since Jason's music has caught on, I believe his original solo album was picked up by another Canadian publisher. So actually, I could potentially get a copyright infringement if I played it on this. Strangely enough, it works because the theme works, but if I play the full song, I think I get tagged on it. So we don't want that. Chad Reno, hello, greetings, all the greatest hits of folks here. Perfect time for Illinois listeners. Yes, 8 p.m. Central Time. I timed it just for Illinois folks. That is my motto. Time things for Illinois. That sounded snarky, but it wasn't meant to be snarky. All right. One other thing that I'm going to mention, for those of you who joined the very first Pedalshift Live, there's always a chance for a pug fight. Always a chance for a pug fight in a Pedalshift Live. Right now, you may or may not be hearing snoring, and that is because based on veterinary approval, not specifically for this, but generally speaking, I have basically given the dogs things that will make them sleep and be happy. The upside of that is much lower chance of a pug fight. The thing that's kind of the trade-off for that is we might be getting a lot of snoring in the background. So trade-offs. It's all about that in life. All right, everybody. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get cracking here with the program. And I'm super excited that you're all here. Let's get this rolling. If you are watching this on a replay, I also say thank you for watching this. This is video content that doesn't really move a lot here on the YouTube channel, but here, look, we're making it happen. All right. One of the things about doing a podcast is, hey, James Stratakis, another friend of the show. Hello, Jay. Southern Maryland, bike vids. Yes, Greg from Santa Cruz, California. I'll tell you what, Greg. We were, as most listeners of the show know, we were out in your sort of neck of the woods this past summer, and I think Kimberly and I are very excited to get back out that direction again. It's California coast is pretty good, as anybody from Santa Cruz, California would attest to, I would imagine. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a pause here. So the deal is, This is for room tone, and apparently part of the room tone situation is snoring dogs. So I'm going to have to be able to zero that out by doing that little bit of a pause. Oh, and I think because I've done some rejiggering since the last time, maybe before I start the show, I should mention that, yes, the vibe, the aesthetic here has changed a little bit. I've got... music is a big part of what this office space is all about. You can see my let's see, we got Prince, we got John Lennon. By the way, if you haven't seen the Beatles documentary, get back. Hokey smokes, that was really good. I got my Alanis up there. Alanis documentary. I'm not speaking of great documentaries. Go check that out. Kurt, we got the deck. We got my garbage version 2.0. I love having the music in the background. We've got the holiday lights up. What you can't see is all of the Star Wars junk right here. I mean, it just permeates the space. But and so you got your Star Wars here, you got the music in the background that you can see, and then on this side of the room, it's all bicycle touring stuff. It's just bicycle touring vomit. It's the bike, it's my gear, it's everything. It should be in that cabinet there, but I have not as of yet put it away. So that's just how it's going to be. All right. Okay. I have promised that I'm going to start the actual podcast here. And as I mentioned, there's going to be a little bit of a delay. We capture some room tone, and then I will get into this whole thing. Thank you so much for joining. Chad agrees that Get Back was stunning. I watched all 8 hours of that thing, and I thought, look, I'm a Gen X kid. I mean, the Beatles were kind of a thing. I think when I was in high school, they kind of had a resurgence when the CDs got released. But I have to say, I never thought that I would like an 8-hour documentary on the making of one of their lesser received albums. But I think that Let It Be actually is a pretty fantastic album in retrospect when we look at it. But really, really interesting. Even if you're not into the Beatles, man, watching insanely creative people create, really, really, really amazing. So I couldn't recommend it more. On your Disney Plus account, when you're not watching your Star Wars and your Marvel stuff, go watch the Beatles. Go watch Peter Jackson's amazing documentary. All right. Thank you, Gal, for joining. I think I've said that 12 times now. So a little room tone here, and we'll get cracking. Greetings and welcome everybody to I think I've done this 3 times. Greetings and welcome to another edition. That's what I usually do. It's funny when people are watching me do this. Yeah, I choked a little bit there. Okay, we're gonna start again. More room tone. Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/266, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody on YouTube. Hello, everybody listening. We are live, baby, live, and welcome to the 266th edition of the Pedalshift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thank you so much for joining, whether you're here live or whether you're listening on a replay. It is my pleasure to do yet another edition of Pedalshift Live. On this particular program, as I've already told the people who are here in the live room, that we are going to be doing a tour reveal here in part 1, and in part 2 we are going to be doing another edition of Ask Me Anything. I have received a bunch of questions from folks from a variety of different sources, and I've also got folks in the live chat here who are going to be first in line for the AMA, but that's going to be in the second part of this show. Let me be the 800th person to wish you happy holidays, no matter what you celebrate, or even if you don't celebrate anything at all. Happy whatever, happy December, happy end of the year. It's been it's been maybe, I don't know, was this a more rougher year than last year? I don't know, but we're still kind of obviously in the throes of this whole pandemic thing. It's impacting all sorts of different things, including bicycle touring, of course. I'm sort of hoping that maybe 2022, in addition to me finally getting those jetpacks that I was promised as a child, which I am still not in receipt of, I'm also hoping that maybe this pandemic thing clicks back a little bit. But recent news suggests maybe not. So look, let's just keep doing what we've been doing, trying to find a little bit of joy where we can find it. And if bicycle touring can be a part of that for you, awesome. If it can't be for you, then listen to the show, listen to the pod, because I'm going out there and trying to do these rides in a safe and responsible way, as I have mentioned ad nauseum for the last nearly 2 years. I've talked about what I do and whatnot, and we're going to reveal the next tour. The next tour is going to be in early 2022, January 2022. Many of you probably have already figured this one out. I am going to return back to Florida again for my first tour of 2022. Probably going to be in the Central Florida area. Now, most of you kind of are thinking, Tim, by this point when you do a tour reveal, you've got things pretty set out. You are a notorious planner, perhaps, paralyzingly so. And so just giving us this kind of like maybe kind of stuff, that's off-brand for you. I agree wholeheartedly. But it's probably more so because I'm hashing out a few options relative to the beginning and the end of it. The original plan of all of this was to do the classic tour that I have done twice now. It was originally called the Cross Florida Tour. I don't remember what I called the second one, but this one was going to, again, originate in Tampa. I was going to fly down with my Brompton and take the same route through Central Florida as past years. However, and that may still happen. However, there's a new potential plan here that's kind of throwing some monkey wrenches. Not monkey wrenches. This is good. If this happens, this is good. The idea may be that we drive down, and when I say we, it would be myself, the dogs, and Kimberly. We would all drive down together in the La Crosse. Would we use it in its camper mode? Maybe. I don't know yet. Perhaps. Florida is shockingly close to the capital region of this fine country. To drive to Central Florida is about 10 to 12 hours, give or take. Now, for many of you, you're like 10 to 12 hours. That's a lot, dude. That's like 2 days of driving. For me, after this summer's adventures, when I'm driving 20 plus hours, and I think I drove 24 plus hours in one shot, 10 or 12 hours feels like a walk in the park at this point. So I don't know if we'll have to go camper mode with the La Crosse. But it turns out that our anniversary, my anniversary with my lovely partner Kimberly, is at the end of January, coinciding close in time with when I was planning on doing this trip. And it occurred to me that given the fact that I still have the ability to do some remote work through the work that I do with my other hat on, the lawyering stuff, the law talking stuff that I don't tend to bring up too much on this program, that I could do a little bit of remote work. We could do some extended time down there during kind of the coldest, winteriest months here in this part of the woods, and that we would then be able to properly celebrate our anniversary. You're going to say, Tim, what number? And I'm going to say 18th, I think. Pretty sure it's 18th. Once you get above like 15, things get murky. So anyways, so that may be a possibility. And if that's the case, my start place may be different than in the original idea. So I don't know exactly what this is going to end up being for sure. Although I'm hoping to get that figured out sometime in the next few days, because frankly, I've already made some plans. I already have flights booked. I already have a hotel booked along the original route. And it may be that I end up doing some different things just in the fact that I might not be flying. So I would obviously have to cancel that. So yeah, I think that what's going to happen here is I originally was going to be doing, and the classic tour is going from west to east, as I mentioned before, going from Tampa through Lakeland, through south of Orlando, the Kissimmee area, and then maybe eventually to Cocoa if I decide to go that far and do the full Cross Florida. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull that off. I think that there's also another opportunity, especially if we end up driving, where I might actually get a little bit of a fast forward out of the western part of the state and do the Cross Florida Trail route that's there. Now, it's not one contiguous trail, but it's a series of trails, not unlike, I think, how the Gap was way back in the day. The Great Allegheny Passage, for those of you who haven't followed the show much, it's really a series of regional trails that they eventually were able to link together into one contiguous long trail. I think that's what they're trying to do in Florida. I don't know if they're ever going to do that fully off-road, but at this moment, you can get from Tampa or Clearwater, really, all the way up north, and then you start cutting over. And you're taking a bunch of regional trails, and you end up basically in Winter Garden near Orlando. And then there are, of course, bike lanes and things like that that can take you into Orlando. So that's really intriguing to me. So I'm looking more into that. So basically, at this point, it's a gigantic work in progress. What's the route I'm going to take? It would be easiest if I just ended up repeating what I've done before. I already have the route. It's already plugged into, my phone, essentially. But frankly, I think I also could probably do this from memory at this point because I've already done it twice. And I think that I would be able to do it a third time without too much of a hassle. But there's something to be said about doing this a little bit differently. And I think that might be something that's going to push me to look at one of these alternate routes. The downside would be is that alternate route, I think, is a little bit longer than I would have time for. So we're going to have to kind of suss all of this out. And of course, I'll be revealing all of this in the January podcast that will almost assuredly preset this tour. Will be the introduction to this tour outside of just the announcement here. Bicycle. I am going to be bringing almost assuredly the Brompton. And the reason why I'm going to bring the Brompton is if I fly, it's just, I bring the Brompton when I fly. Unless I'm able to fly an airline like Alaska or any of the other airlines. I think a lot of the other airlines are starting to match the relatively inexpensive bike in a box or bike in a bag kind of situation. I think it's like somewhere between $25 and $30 now to fly a bike, which is really remarkable. But I've also had really good luck with Southwest Airlines and Alaska Airlines with the Brompton in the overhead. I've documented this on the pod a bunch of times. That would be certainly the case, I think, this time if I end up flying. If I don't fly, however, I anticipate that no matter which route I take, I may need to get a fast forward via a Lyft or an Uber or some other type of rideshare in the Orlando side of things, because as of the moment, I've got a reservation for a couple of days that I was just going to do some solo hanging out at Disney World again, which I did the second trip, and it's just a ton of fun, and it's a great time of year to be there. It's sort of in the in-between times. The crowds aren't so crazy, and I as you all know, when Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars, I'm kind of all in. You know what I mean? That's part of all of this as well. I've also mentioned, I think, on past episodes of the show, when I have gone down to Disney World, that unfortunately bicycling kind of has a metaphorical wall when it comes to tours involving Disney World. It's just not really possible to bicycle onto Disney property. I've read some folks that have given it a shot. There is an open question whether or not Disney security would actually pull you over and stuff, because it is, while it's a public road, it is quasi private property on the Disney Resort side of things. So it's just not clear to me whether or not it's even allowed. I would posit it is really unsafe. There are no shoulders on many of those roads, and while I could throw a ton of lights on and bicycle, really defensively and whatnot, I've seen how people drive down there in and around the resorts. They ain't looking for bikes, and I think I'm just gonna do a hard pass on that. So another reason why riding the Brompton makes a lot of sense. Also, that's what I've done in the last few years. And I also haven't really ridden the Brompton in any touring capacity for a while. And I really am kind of itchy to do that. I rode it again recently, just kind of riding about in DC. It's just a fun bike to ride. And I really, really enjoy using it for touring as well. It's kind of the whole point of doing it. Lodging is always a question for these types of tours, and I would say it's TBD at this point. So, I do have a plan in place. If I stick with it, it would go something like this. It's the classic route. I'm in Tampa. I ride from Tampa to Lakeland, whereas before in Lakeland, I've gotten an Airbnb. I actually stayed at a really lovely couple's house, a beautiful room, beautiful spot. With COVID going on, I think that I feel a little bit more comfortable staying in a hotel. That's an arguable point, but I think that I also priced it out in a lot of the Airbnbs in the area. Hotels were actually a lot more competitive compared to the prior time when Airbnbs were way cheaper than the hotel. So I've currently got a hotel reservation that I could keep or I could cancel depending on how things go. Then from Lakeland to the Kissimmee to the Disney Resorts area would be the second day of the whole ride. So a repeat kind of a thing. If I changed the trail route though, that's when things get kind of interesting because I might consider doing camping for the first time. However, just again, all of these things, this is like the game of chance tour in some ways. Certain choices beget other choices. If I fly, as you all know, it's really hard for me to be able to bring a ton of camping gear with me. And it's just a lot easier for the Brompton rides where I'm all fully self-contained to be able to do that in a way that is a roofed lodging kind of situation. So if I fly, I think I'm going to lean more towards the roofed lodging thing. If we do drive down and I end up doing the trails, I do think that there is a possibility that I might be able to find some camping alternatives in there. So that's what I'm going to look at doing. Florida is kind of funny during the winter. When I've done some scouting of Florida Keys routes during the winter, the one thing that I found way back in the day was if you're not on top of making reservations for campgrounds way in advance, you're going to get shut out. You really need to make them up to 9 months in advance. Now, that's in the before times. Who the heck knows? I didn't even bother looking this time because by the time I was sort of sussing this out, it was way too late for that kind of a thing. The other thing is that, and this is just a personal preference kind of a thing, paying for a campground is one thing, but paying RV rates for tent sites is kind of another. There is a point where I just sort of draw the line and I'm like, man, I'm just not into it. And I have done a lot of reading about stealth camping in all over Florida. There are challenges to that. Municipal law enforcement is one of them. Private landowners is another. And your friendly neighborhood gator is the third. And amongst other wildlife in Florida, y'all got scary wildlife down there. That's all I have to say. So to be determined here what's going to be happening from a lodging perspective. As far as weather, gear, all those question marks, January, as I found, is pretty nice. I think I got drizzled on a little bit on the second tour. The first tour, I think it was it was almost downright warm. I definitely got too much sun, I remember, on the first tour. It can be cool. You can get some rain, or it can be warm and down. It can lean into hot depending on what's going on down there. It's a bit of a crapshoot. But I can absolutely assure you it is much more bikeable than the District of Columbia or the great state of West Virginia. So I'm just going to say that it's an improvement, and that's why I'm going to be doing it down there. I'm going to prepare for rain no matter what. Of course, I'll be able to kind of scope out the weather reports ahead of time. If we drive, I'm able to bring a ton more gear and be able to kind of pick and choose what I need to bring. If I fly, obviously, I'm a little bit more limited. So, just to be determined on all of that. I'm going to be using the Brompton, as I mentioned, almost assuredly. I think it would be a big upset if I ended up taking one of the other bikes. And I think it's an open question right now. I really like the modified camping setup, or the modified touring setup, I should say, for the Brompton, which still allows me to bring a tent and camping gear. But I think that if I do find that camping is going to be a part of this trip, I may revert back to the old school pathless pedaled backpack trick style, which I've documented on the pod before. And of course, Russ and Laura, if they didn't invent it, then they pretty much perfected it. And that's where I stole it all from. The nice thing about that is that you got the backpack and I've got the front pannier as well. A lot of capacity if I do that. So if I am going to camp and I do want to have a little bit more gear with me, if that's going to be a helpful thing, I may bring all of that so that I've at least got that kind of an option. Again, that's only really going to be possible if we drive. If I fly, it would take too many bags and it would be just too complicated. I do really think that if I fly, it's much more likely that I'll stick to the plan and do roofed accommodations for all of that. So that's kind of where a few more things. Am I ever going to do a tour that's one I haven't done before? Look, I recognize that I have repeated a bunch of my tours for the better part of the last couple of years. Very pandemic related. And I appreciate your patience if you were like, Tim, I would love to see you ride something that you haven't ridden a million times before. Part of it is just, when I know a route, I know what's there and I know what's available. So if things go sideways, pandemic wise or otherwise, I feel a little bit safer with all that. I think it's a little bit more responsible. There's my responsibility gene kicking in. But I do think that I am going to try to mix it up. And that's why I am looking at the alternate route in there. When this pandemic eases the F back, maybe I'll be able to add in some other stuff. Speaking of, sidebar to all of this is pandemic willing. As I sit here and recording this at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday, December 10th. There's your timestamp, folks. Look, the Omicron variant thing seems to be it might be a thing. So we'll see. I am currently boosted, and happily so. So I feel pretty confident about where I am right now, but starting to see some stuff from doctors and immunologists and all the folks that are worth listening to on all of this that are suggesting that there's a possibility that the vaccine and this new variant may not necessarily mesh. So we're just going to have to see. If this thing does blow up, I may have to rejigger elements of all of this. But as I'm sitting here right now, I think I'm feeling pretty confident that I will be able to pull all of this off. I have to say, I'm super excited about this ride. I'm excited about getting down to Florida when it's not 800,000 degrees like it was in September when I went for my birthday. It's just so darn hot down there. So during the winter, it's much nicer, and it's a great place to do bike touring. I am looking forward to kind of getting. I don't feel like that I've been in bike shape for the better part of this year for a variety of reasons. And what I'm really hoping is that this particular trip is going to allow me to, even though it's a short one, just keep some miles underneath me so I don't kind of go completely off the wagon, as it were, over the winter, and I still have some bicycling in me, and we can really kick off 2022 with a bang. So that's what's really exciting about all of this, and I'm excited, of course, to share it all with you. Certainly going to be doing the tour journals as a part of the podcast, and you get to go along for the ride, for better or for worse, depending on what ends up happening. Going to turn now, as we have completed the reveal of the 2022 tour number one. Notice that there's a couple of one person, Dave, says you're giving Gators too much credit. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. It's funny, Dave, way back, I believe it was it in 99 to 2000 or 2000 to 2001? I think it was 2000 to 2001. I was in Florida, and I actually spent New Year's at Biscayne Bay National Park, and we did a slog, a bog slog, I think they called it. And we are literally up to our waists in Biscayne Bay swampy water, and the park ranger is kind of tromping us around, and it was kind of cool. The water was really strangely warm, and it was kind of squishy and cool, and all of that. And then the park ranger is like, that's where that's a gator nest right over there. And I'm sitting there going, why on earth are we here? And that's exactly what the park ranger said, is that, when we were, a half a mile away, that gator heard us, splashing through or slogging through, and, swam right off. They are more afraid of us, but it would be just my luck. That's all I have to say. It would be just my luck. Let's see. Greg in Santa Cruz is saying, I don't know how to put it into words, but doing the same tour isn't always the same. I'm guessing most folks always have new or different things on the horizon, and that's rad too. Hey, that's a really good point. One of the reasons why I like to repeat the Oregon coast, for instance, I do travel. I travel a long way to go to the Oregon coast, and I do that almost every single year. One of the reasons why I do it is, it is different every single time. There are elements that are the same, and so there's familiarity. There's great resources. It's beautiful, but it is different every year. I mean, let's face it, this year's was completely different than any other one that I've had. Having that kind of weird chain mechanical, it really forced me to slow down. It really forced me to utilize the knowledge that I had of the coastal bus system, and it ended up rescuing the tour in a lot of ways. Now, did I bike as much as I wanted to? No, but I got to drink a lot of beers in Newport, Oregon, which was pretty great. I have no problem with that. So, Dave mentions I did the Everglades swamp stomps all the time. Love it. It's a really fond memory of that particular trip. I forget. I don't know about you, but my memory, it feels like I have really good memory in certain things and terrible in others. Like, I couldn't tell you where I spent New Year's the year before. Well, maybe the year before that. I know that because it was 2000, and I know I was in the New York metropolitan area for that. But like the year before that, no idea. The year after that, no idea. The year after that, no idea. So sometimes there's certain things that just give you that real sense of it's a memory that you keep for a while, and that was certainly one of them. That was a really, really cool memory there. Let's see. James Stratakis says, we already got, James is getting first in line for the AMA, so maybe we should just kind of do that rather than keep yakking here in the interstitial section here. So anyways, I hope you all are excited as I am for this tour. I am, and I'm looking forward to bringing it to you in 2022. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break here, because for those of you who are in the YouTube, you know that I can edit this stuff out. So I'm going to take a sip of my beer, which is not drinking itself while I talk. I'm here to tell you. Patrick says, even stopping 5 miles before or after a familiar campsite can change an entire trip. Totally agree. Totally agree. I also find that changing camping sites can really be a big deal and will really change things. But then, it's funny. The Oregon coast is a great example. I have become very particular about the campsites that I go to, except then there's the one that's part of the rhythm of that trip that I'm like always kind of disappointed with. I've always been trying to figure out a way to replace that one, and one of these days I'm going to figure that all out. So thank you all for your participation and for hanging in there. Let's see here. I'm just going to move a couple windows around here. All right. Okay. Thrilling YouTube content here. So we are going to start now with the Ask Me Anything section of the show. And on we've done this a few times on the pod. We talk about bicycle touring and sometimes non-bicycle touring things. I actually have a few things here. Nobody asked me these questions, but I have non-bike stuff that I thought I would mention. So I'm not even going to pretend that somebody actually wrote those in. But everything else I've got questions on. So we're going to start off with James in the chat here. James Stratakis asks, you've talked about doing a gap ride similar to the C&O ride that I already have. Have I considered crowdsourcing that using the Pedalshift Society? Ooh, that's intriguing. I haven't. Tell me more, first of all. But second of all, it's funny. I was just listening to a recent episode of the Sprocket podcast, and the bike tag thing is kind of interesting to me as a thing to do along common bike touring routes. I think that would be kind of a really interesting thing. It's sort of like a combination of geocaching and whatever. It would almost be like sort of a Pedalshift passport along the C&O, and I would find ways to kind of like have you be able to collect certain things. And it wouldn't be like physical things or taking anything from a national park, which would be, well, a violation of federal law, so I would like to not do that. But, like certain things that I think are peculiar that maybe most people would just kind of ride on by, but it would be something that you would get to collect by, kind of taking pictures of that. So I don't know. Tell me more, James. Let's see. Dave Fletcher asks, what is the most unusual / scary / rare animal you've ever seen while on tour? Last month I saw Florida panther while riding in Southwest Florida. Wow, you win on that one. They're still endangered if memory serves. I think that's pretty cool. What is the most unusual, scary, or rare? I think the most unusual one... I'm still kind of like in awe, and this is weird, of foxes, because they're kind of more nocturnal, and so when I see them during the time that I'm riding, I always think that that's kind of a special thing. They're kind of unusual. They're not rare, but it's unusual to see them. So I would say that foxes, especially, I saw a silver fox once. And that was really, really cool. A really unusual fox. Scary. Well, I think that's pretty easy. The timber rattler that I saw on the Gap between Cumberland and Frostburg that one time, it wasn't like it was, on top of me or anything like that, but it was a big old rattler, and the fact that it was right there on the side of the trail, they're very dangerous. Now they're dangerous if you get bitten. It's hard to get bit by them apparently, but if you stumble and fall into a timber rattler, that's kind of bad news. Rare, well, that one's tricky. I don't know if I've seen anything particularly rare animal wise. I do remember seeing a black bear at a distance at Elk Prairie Campground in California. The elk were close by, and Roosevelt elk, actually, those are kind of that's actually kind of the most interesting big animal that I've seen. But actually way off in the distance across 101 and then up a ridge, I saw a black bear there once, and that was actually pretty cool. I think that folks that do more bike packing probably have way better answers than the kind of riding that I've been doing. I don't do a ton of backcountry stuff, but sometimes it's the little ones, like the eastern box turtles that you see along the C&O. They're delightful. Always a kick to see bald eagles, especially because when I was growing up, a bald eagle was, practically endangered. I think they were threatened, not endangered, but, now they're coming back. So it's always a thrill to see them. So yeah, I love wildlife. I love wildlife sightings. They can really make a tour, especially when I'm in places that I don't tend to be in a lot. So when I'm in Florida, seeing egrets and other things that are unusual birds compared to what I'm used to seeing, I just like that stuff. It's one of the more interesting elements of bicycle touring. Excuse me. Let's see. Hello, Reinhard Biggle from Eastern Ontario. Thank you for joining the show, sir. Folks in the chat room, please feel free to continue to throw your questions. Yes, your questions. I have exhausted your questions for the moment, so I am going to turn to some emailed and or social media questions. Let's see here. Am I going to do a tour outside of the United States in 2022? That is a great question. Intention, I think, is pretty high on that. I've got two places in particular that I would really like to go to. Jason Kent, the great musician who created the theme song. Well, he didn't do it for the theme song. I can assure you of that. I repurposed the great song America for the theme song. And which you've all been enjoying for 266 episodes of the show, or well, you've been enjoying it because it's an amazing song. He's up in Montreal. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Coincidentally, my partner Kimberly is with his partner right now in New York City. They're kind of having, painting the town red and whatnot. I would love to get up to Canada, perhaps to Montreal, but I would like to get to see some folks up in the Canada area. The Canada area, is that an actual sentence? I wouldn't mind doing some bike touring up there. I've literally never done it. I've talked about the circumnav of Lake Ontario, which would be really cool. But yeah, Toronto, I love. Montreal, I love. And yeah, I think that would be really cool. If not that, I think I've mentioned this on the show. I have family. I have a cousin in Brussels, and it is a 2-day, if not a 3-day. I think it's 2 days riding from Paris to Brussels, and I think that would be a really cool trip to do. Maybe fly into, well, no, I have to figure out how I would do all this, but she's desperate to go to Disneyland Paris with me, and that's one I have not been to. So I think that we would figure out a way where I would do some bicycle touring. Maybe we would end up in Disneyland Paris, and then I would end up in Brussels because I've never been there, and she lives there, so I would like to do that. So that's another tour that I would like to do. Is it going to happen? I have no idea. I think that I have amassed enough vacation time over the last couple of years that I've been kind of stingy about using it, that I certainly have the time. But then there's sort of the element of, when I go away, my partner Kimberly has to deal with 2 dogs of a certain age, and that is and the cat. The cat's the wild card, man. So sometimes that can be more of a barrier. I'm finding now, just the logistics of being able to go away and knowing whether or not the family can handle things without my presence, because it is hard. It is a lot of heavy lifting, and I appreciate it when she does that, and that allows me to go out to do bicycle touring. So, and of course, the pandemic, who the heck knows? I am really hopeful that outside of the US is going to be possible. It may only be Canada, but I love Canada, and I miss Canada, and I haven't been there in a very long time, so I would like to go there. In fact, this might be the longest I have not been in Canada in my entire life, which may sound very weird to you, but it's true. I used to live very close to the border when I grew up, and we would always go through Canada to go visit my grandparents in Detroit, from where we lived in Western New York. So I was in Canada quite a bit, and I'm quite fond of it. Hello, Canada, if you're listening. Next question. Let me just double check. Okay, here we go. I think we got some fun questions. Do I miss Wegmans, from Scott? Do I miss it? No, because there are Wegmans here in the DC metropolitan area. In fact, there's a Wegmans that is almost exactly halfway between my cabin and DC. I am in Wegmans not infrequently. They are also opening up, I swear this is not an ad, they're opening up a Wegmans in DC that is very close to where our vet is, and yeah, I'll be there all the time, as will everybody from Western New York. So yeah, I don't miss it, but it's still the best. If you're from where I grew up, have I told this story before? My grandmother used to say she remembered Wegmans. She's a Rochester native, was a Rochester native. She said, I remember when Wegmans was pulled by horses. It was a cart. It was literally a fruit cart. So it is a long in my blood. Long in my blood? That's not a saying. James Stratakis, any U.S. trails you still have on the bucket list? Yes. The one that is I think gets repeated the most that I haven't done yet is it the Cowboy Trail? What is the one in Nebraska? I believe it's the Cowboy Trail in Nebraska. That's one that I'm really interested in because that's very long. There are some other interesting trails that are similarly long. The one in Washington is really intriguing to me. However, because you can cross Washington State by that. However, once you get east of the Cascades, it's really more of a bike packing thing, and I have heard some dodgy things about access to the trail, and I'm throwing that into quotes because you kind of lose the trail in some parts there. I believe that's the Pioneer Trail, if memory serves. So that one I'm really intrigued with. Although Eastern Washington is just so damn hot. It's so hot. I really would have loved to have done that Lewis and Clark route that I had planned to do back in 2014. The whole reason why I did the whole Pacific Coast was because it was just too hot to be able to do the Lewis and Clark trail, and that of course goes through Eastern Washington. So yeah, James confirms that it's the Cowboy Trail in Nebraska. Yeah, that's probably the most likely one. I will say, if there, I don't know, I have to check the Rails to Trails folks. I have not been to 2 states. I have been to 48 states in the union, and I'm not talking just airport states. I'm not talking just like, I was there for 5 minutes kind of a thing. I have literally driven across, biked across in some instances, 48 of the 50 U.S. states. The 2 I'm missing are North Dakota and Alaska. And getting some kind of a bicycle tour element to the eventual 49th and 50th visits, I think would be pretty cool too. So I have to check that out. Brian Bechtel asks do I and Dave Grohl know each other? No. No, I know Dave Grohl. I certainly know Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl couldn't pick me out of a lineup. Although Dave Grohl's from the DC area, and his mom, I think, still lives here. So, Dave Grohl seems like an interesting cat. I haven't read his book. I do want to read his book. He seems like an interesting cat. All right. Patrick Murtaugh asks, are there any stereotypes of Florida that bike touring can dispel? I will say, Patrick, that when I was first looking at Florida as a bike touring option, a few years ago, before I did it in the first instance, everything I would read would be like, oh, it's a nightmare. Oh, there's no infrastructure. The drivers don't look out. It's dangerous. And I just didn't have that experience at all. That's not to discount the very real possibility that it's dangerous in a lot of places. I've already told you that Disney World is not a place I would ever consider cycling ever, because they would dudes with mouse ears would come out with sticks and beat me, down to the ground, or I would get hit by some tourist who's off looking at the Minnie Mouse sculpture or something like that. But I'm sure that there are parts of the state of Florida that are not very good for cycle touring. I found that if you follow a few things, the biggest tip that I had with Florida was the cycling clubs. I looked at the routes that they did, and by following those routes, I mean, they're riding at all those roads all the time. Obviously, there's trails. There's great trails in Florida, and I have to say that I'm really drawn to maybe doing some more riding of those trails. But I think that the biggest stereotype that I could dispel is that Florida is bad for bicycling and bicycle touring in particular. I just don't think that's true. Never mind the fact that the Adventure Cycling Association has at least one, if not two routes: the Southern Tier and the Eastern ride that go through there. That's their stamp of approval kind of ride. So I mean, there's plenty of good riding in Florida, but that's a stereotype that I think we really should dispel. Let's see. Sam Scruggs. Hello, Sam. I do overnight trips out the C&O from DC and tend to overpack. People see the gear and get excited. Pittsburgh? They say, yes, I get that all the time. And not just out of DC, I'll get it over here, mid-trail as well. They seem disappointed when I say no. Does this happen to you? How do you respond? I get that every time I do a tour on the C&O, without fail. And what'll happen, what I'll usually say is, not this time, or something like that, where I kind of, because I don't want them to be like, oh, what a poser, It's like, yeah, I've done this once or twice. Maybe it's my dumb ego or something like that. But I do say, I've done it before, but not this time, as I ride by or something like that. Yeah, that happens. It's funny, Sam. That happens all the time to me. And it's almost always a dude who's a little older than me, and is kind of like walking with family. Almost exclusively that. So like maybe a 60-ish year old dude, like maybe 10 years older than me, give or take. That yeah, it is pretty funny. Let's see. Brian mentions the Flint Hills Trail in Kansas as another potential opportunity there. That seems pretty cool. Reinhardt says being able to tour in January without winter gear sounds awesome. Reinhardt, it really is. There are other places in the U.S. where you could go. Texas, you could do it. Probably Southern California, you could do it. Hawaii, it's another place you could conceivably do it. But I tell you what, Florida is really accessible for me where I live. There are really inexpensive flights. It's really easy to drive down, as that may be the case for me this time. But yeah, to not have to deal with winter gear. You listened to the part 1 last week. Or I'm sorry, not last week, yesterday as I'm sitting here, of my cold weather ride on the Gap and the descent there. I grew up in cold weather, and I keep thinking to myself, oh man, I'm just going to tour in the winter. I did winter camping. I'm going to do that. And I've just found that over the years, my desire to really punish myself like that it's just not there anymore. So yeah, I'm the prototypical old white dude who goes down to Florida every winter now, apparently, to recreate. But I am not a snowbird yet. I don't think I will be either. Dave Fletcher mentions that Florida also has the ACA has a Florida connector as well, which is another great trail. So yeah, plenty of great riding in Florida. Thank you all in the live chat for your questions. Keep them coming. I'm going to go to another emailed question. Is the Green Goblin unretired? The Green Goblin is literally sitting next to me right now. No. I mean, yes and no and yes. I think that it's an East Coast bike for real now. I don't think I would ever fly this bike anyplace. I think it's going to be my cabin bike. It rides really well right now. And I think that given its gearing situation, riding on the C&O is really good because there's a very narrow amount of upshifting or downshifting that you have to do on the C&O. And I think it's actually a pretty good bike for that. So I think I'm going to say it's in semi-retirement. Replacing that chain gave it a brand new lease on life. The gearing is really dialed in. The guy that I wish I could give him a shout out again. He's a Portland bike mechanic, did a really nice job dialing in the gearing on this one, and even and so good that when I even replaced the chain, and presumably that chain was stretched and it was off a bit, I put in a brand new chain and it still shifts like really, really well. So yeah, I'm reluctant to say that this bike is not going to happen anymore. I kind of like it. It's got character. It's got character for sure. It doesn't fit me. It's really too small for me, but it is kind of a fun bike. And, to ride a vintage 1990s era bicycle that's still, just kicking butt, I think that's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite bike purchases ever. I got it at the Community Cycling Center in Portland, Oregon. They did a great job rehabbing it, and it's just a fun bike. It's a fun bike. It's not going to be my primary bike for sure. Next up in the AMA, I'm just keeping an eye on time here, so I don't think we'll be able to get through all of these. Let me pick and choose a few here. Let's go with this one. I thought this was an interesting one. Somebody asks, I want to do my first bike tour, but I'm scared of going by myself. What's your tips? I am paraphrasing all of these, by the way. Here's what I would say. A couple of things, and this might be a bit of a repeat of stuff that I've said on the show before. I am by nature not an introvert, and it's not to say that I'm an extrovert, although I certainly have extrovert tendencies. It's been bottled up for this entire pandemic, of course. And so when our office holiday party was last night, and I was like, gabbing away with folks, and I was Mr. Extrovert last night. But I'll tell you what, on bike tour, I'm an introvert. And the reason why I say this is that it's okay to ride by yourself. In some ways, I kind of prefer it. I say it a lot on the show. The only person I've ever done a bike tour with, my very first bike tour I did with the Climate Ride folks. Great group, great stuff. I learned something really important about myself then, and that is group rides are not for me. I didn't like that I was told when I could start and stop. That I didn't like that. I understand it. It's part of the deal. It's part of the safety. It's part of logistics, and they're great at it. But I wanted to kind of do my own thing. I find bicycle touring to be really meditative. And again, this is all probably repeat of stuff I've said before. And in some ways that sort of overcomes a lot of the fears that you get. The very first time that I went, well, I'll tell you what, that 2014 ride, I use that as a touchstone a lot. That was all by myself, like all by myself. I remember I went to Portland, then took the bus up to Seattle, hung out with my cousin in Seattle, and then took the ferry to Victoria, BC. And I remember getting there feeling very alone. And, it was in a very safe city, a beautiful city. If you haven't been to Victoria, BC, highly recommended. And, it was a really short ride to the first camp ground there. And I just remembered how stunningly alone I felt, because at the time, I have an American cell phone in Canada, and it would have cost $1 kajillion to, do anything with the cell phone. So I was even more isolated by being, in that campground with a phone that was an emergency only kind of thing, break glass in case of emergency. And I just remembered that was a really isolating feeling. And I still get that from time to time. But I will say, it's really good to be in your own thoughts. And it's really good to test yourself. I think that it's a good way to, well, let me use a yoga thing. Kimberly owned a yoga studio for a bunch of years. And, one of the things about yoga is that you find your edge. And then every time you find that edge, you're right at your limit. Don't go beyond it. Don't go to pain. Don't go to injury, but go to that edge. And every single time you go to your edge, then you're going to be able to advance just a little bit more each time. I think that's a really good life lesson. And, if you're scared about doing something, challenging yourself to do it is a really good thing. I think there's what's that famous, it was a first lady. It was, FDR's wife, whose name absolutely escapes me at this point, but I think she said, do one thing to challenge, or do one thing that scares you every day. I am super paraphrasing, and I've already forgotten. Is that Eleanor? Was that her name? I can't even remember. I'm the worst. I have the worst memory. In any event, I think the quote is correct. So if the attribution is wrong, anyways, so the point being, I think that's a really positive thing. I think it's good that it scares you a little bit, because you know what? It is a challenge, and challenging things can sometimes be scary. So I think what I would say is my biggest tip would be embrace it. Do a lot of research. If you're worried about something, remove the things that make it a mystery. I find, if you knew the plot to the scariest movie you ever saw, well, maybe it wouldn't be that scary. So, maybe do the same thing. Make sure you look at the maps. Make sure you know where all the bailouts are. What are the things that you're worried about the most? Prep a lot. Ask questions, get on the bike touring Reddit's pretty good. Listen to the show. Occasionally I say things that are somewhat cogent, as opposed to figuring out who said things. Eleanor Roosevelt. See, this is why I have a chat room. I need a chat. I need you all like every day, because I swear this happens to me all the time. So anyways, yeah, that's the that would be my best tip for you. And I'd invite folks in the chat room if you've got other tips for this listener as well. Let's do, I think, a couple more questions, and I'm just going to double check, because again, if you're in the chat box, you get first dibs. No, I think I've exhausted the chat box, folks. Let's see. What was another good one in here? Whatever happened to bike packing? Are you still considering that? Answer, yes. I am still considering it. I did a whole episode, I believe, on all of this and what I was thinking and about maybe getting a new bike. And then I thought about, maybe I can use the existing bikes that I have, particularly my newer Safari, that I could do some retrofitting on that. I think that right now, if I did get into it, I think I'm leaning towards, I would get another bike. Which would mean that at the time, the Goblin lived in Oregon, and this would mean that I would end up having 4 bikes here on the East Coast, and maybe that's not super ideal. I think the first thing I would need to do is figure out a bike storage situation, which would probably be here at the cabin. I don't know, maybe a bike shed or something like that. But I think that if I was going to do it, I think that I'd want to do it with the all the bike packing bags and all that kind of stuff. I know you don't need to do that, but I just think that if I was going to jump into it, I think I'd want to jump into it that way. I am starting to get a little bit more interested in getting away from it all. The C&O is a great place to get away from it all. It's not really, it's bike pack-y, but I'm talking about the kind of stuff that my buddy MJ does. Go out way, way, way deep into the woods and to the wilderness. I'm kind of intrigued with all of that. So yeah, I would say I'm still considering it. I'm still mulling it around. Pandemic, yada yada yada. I just feel like the pandemic has just messed with so many different plans and experiments and things that I was thinking about. All right, let's see. Let's do non-bike stuff. Let's do a couple of non-bike things. I was just at Disneyland recently, and I came up with something that I think is very, very important for you all. If you are visiting Southern California and you are going to Disneyland, I'm here to posit to you that there is a Disneyland food cycle. You can hit for the Disneyland food cycle. That, in baseball, I'm not a baseball guy, but hitting for the cycle is a single, a double, a triple, and a home run. So it's 4 things, right? Hitting for the Disneyland food cycle is a churro from the stand. They have a few stands, but you got to get a churro, and they're just amazing. Get a beignet. You got to get the beignet from New Orleans Square. Don't miss that. That's your second one. A corn dog. There's a stand where you can get a corn dog right off of Main Street. Corn dog. I am not a hot dog guy, but a Disneyland corn dog, chef's kiss. And last but not least, go get a Dole Whip. That's hitting for the Disneyland food cycle. I will fight you over that if you think that that is not the hitting for the food cycle at Disneyland. TV I'm liking lately. I mentioned the Get Back documentary. Holy moly, that was really, really good. I mentioned the Alanis Morissette documentary. Those are the Alanis documentaries on HBO Max. Get Back's on Disney Plus. Hawkeye is amazing. If you read the Matt Fraction run back in 2012, 2013, it's really similar to that. It's really good. And of course, it hasn't come out yet. It's 19 days. Not that I'm counting or anything. Book of Boba Fett, man. We're getting our Star Wars content back. I'm super excited for that. And one other thing, I'm actually going to go to a movie theater for the first time I don't even remember what my last movie theater movie was. It was probably the Christmas before COVID, because Kimberly and I have a tradition of doing a Christmas Day movie in a theater and Chinese food, which I think has become a thing. It was my Jewish friends in law school turned me on to it, and I was just like, that's amazing. That is the best way to spend Christmas ever. And it was a thing. So I adopted it, and Kimberly and I adopted it. And so we've done it for a while. So it's been a few years. There haven't been a lot of movies in the theaters that have been very exciting to me, but probably is no surprise to anybody here. Spider-Man No Way Home comes out a week from today. No, a week from yesterday. And I am going to go in perhaps double masked like I was on the plane. Even though I am triple boosted and all that, sitting inside with people around me who I don't know if they're vaccinated or not. I think I'm going to tread lightly on that one, especially with this variant going around. But I can't not see this movie. It's not streaming anyplace, so I gotta go check it out. Spider-Man No Way Home. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so that's all the non-bike touring stuff. Maybe we'll do one more bike touring one just to wrap this all out. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for your questions. I'm really excited that we had a nice little group here tonight. This is very exciting. Let's see. The last of the bike touring ones. Do I really want to answer the chafing question? Yeah, let's do this. Okay. I don't like talking about this. The question was, what's the best way to avoid chafing when you're on tour? So I think that the first, and I may have talked about this on the pod in the past, I think everybody's body type is different. Everybody's shape is different. Everybody's how you sit in the saddle. Are you drop bars? Are you more upright? Do you sweat a lot? Hi, that's this guy right here. I think all of these things are different factors. I think the thing that I have learned the most is the number one recommendation I tend to see on cycling forums is you need to wear a bib and wear chamois and have chamois cream and all that, and don't wear underwear. And if you don't do that, you're inevitably going to get a chafing. Well, I know that works for a lot of people. I just cannot do the bibs. I even got away from cycling shorts, which is what I tried for a very long time, because I started with the theory that I needed padding there. And it was I need more padding in the rear sits bones areas, and that's what's creating the chafing situation. What I learned over time is that for me and for my body, it's moisture plus motion. So because I sweat a lot, I tend to get, moisture down there. And when moisture gets down there, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. It can become a problem. So the first thing that I learned was those padded shorts were basically just a giant sponge, and it just soaked up all that moisture and it made things worse. There was no amount. I used the chamois cream and all of that stuff, and it still was problematic. So that was kind of lesson learned there. Mysterious James always swore by wool underwear. And I was sort of like, I'm not super into that. And now, of course, that's all I wear now is wool. I haven't tried wool underwear yet, though. What really made a big difference for me was figuring out a way to stop the moisture from getting down there. And I've talked about this on the pod. I roll up a bandana and I put it in the small of my back, basically at the belt level, and that blocks a lot of moisture that rolls down the back. And that during the summer is a really big deal. And then I just wear the moisture wicking athletic boxer briefs, not boxers. But boxer briefs. It kind of holds everything in the spot there. That is for me as a person with those types of parts. If you do not have those types of parts, then I think that the answer is, as I have learned from other folks who have different parts than I do, and I'm sorry for being obtuse here. It's just, family show and stuff. That it's kind of a similar situation. That you will need to experiment with the types of things that work best for you. It may be that the classic kind of, road cycling gear is really the best thing for you, and that you should get the bib and the chamois cream and all of that kind of stuff. If that works for you, then I celebrate that. It was going to be my place of last resort, and I'm happy that I can still wear kind of quote unquote normal clothes while I tour, even though it's not completely normal. But yeah, it's worked for me, and I would say start with small things first. Try to find ways to determine whether or not it's a moisture issue first. When I say moisture, I mean sweat, of course. That may be something that gets you to where you need to go. That would be my recommendation, I think, here. All right, folks. That's the end of the live show for 2021. I'm here to promise to you that I will try to do more than 2 live shows next year. They are fun. It is great to connect with you all. And it's fun to kind of answer these questions and things like that. I mean, a lot of these questions maybe I've answered before in one way, shape, form, but it is fun to make sure that I'm connected with you all and that we all get into one big group here and we all get to share a drink together and whatnot. Again, I said it at the top of the show, happy holidays to everybody, regardless of what holiday you celebrate. If you celebrate no holidays, have a great rest of the year. I am excited to bring the Pedalshift project to you in 2022. We are going to be hitting episode number 300 next year, probably late in the year is my best guess. So that's kind of exciting. And yeah, you keep listening and I'll keep making them, at least for the near term. That's all I have to say. So thanks so much for joining. And I really look forward to sharing the remainder of the episodes for this year, because I've got some fun stuff left in the hopper for you over the next 2 episodes that are still to come. All right. I'm going to stop recording on the audio side. I'm going to save said audio because you know what? There are times sometimes, let's see, what is this? Episode 266. So we're going to call that file 266. See, more sausage making. One of the things that I do for my day job is I teach law. I'm not in a law school, but I teach law. And the other day I was all set. I had a training that I was doing. I couldn't find the deck. I save things in places in the cloud and whatnot. It didn't exist anyplace. And I nearly lost my mind. And then I realized, I was working on my other computer, which was here at the cabin, and I was in DC, but I luckily had an app that allows me to basically teleport in. And I found the deck and my heart started beating again, which was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, now I'm really, really careful about saving things even more so. So I figure we can hang out for at least another few minutes. Thank you all for joining. I hope this was at least somewhat interesting and fun and whatnot. I always enjoy doing these things, even though it's me talking a lot and reading chat boxes, which, yeah, it's kind of fun, I think. Scott mentions, I switched to Lululemon shorts with a liner a few years ago. No padding, Brooks saddle, 20,000 miles in sweaty Southeast Asia with no chafing or other issues. Yeah, it's interesting, the liner thing. You know, the bib people, the chamois cream people would say, oh, if you've got layers that are rubbing against each other, that creates problems. But Scott, it works for you. And I think that's the bottom line with the chafing issue. Everybody is different. We're all shaped different. We're riding in different places. Some people don't sweat at all. God bless those folks, because I sweat I sweated. It was 20 something degrees going up the damn hill the other day. And I was sweating. I had to peel off layers. It's crazy. I so overheat. It's kind of nuts. So yeah, anyways, I do think that's, Scott, I'm glad that you found that, because I find that there are sometimes some gatekeepers in the cycling world, less so in the bicycle touring world. And there's a lot of, you're doing it wrong, or if you don't do it this way, you're going to suffer, or stuff like that. And I think that it ends up pushing people into making choices that maybe aren't the right choices for them necessarily, So yeah, Lululemon shorts, man. I have a Lululemon shirt that I bought in Vancouver back when they were way smaller, way less of a big deal. And I love that shirt. It's a little bit falling apart now, but it's one of my favorite shirts. I think it was supposed to have been made of seaweed, which I'm not sure is really true. But I like to believe such things, that shirts can be made of seaweed. Brian says, always enjoy the live shows. Thanks, Tim, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too, sir. I hope you have a wonderful one. Hopefully you enjoyed my lights. I was sort of hoping that my tree would be able to make an appearance here. It is there, but there's a wall there, so that's why I brought the lights in here, to try to be a little bit festive. So yeah, I did a few additional lights this year. I have, at the end of my driveway, I have some pines that are growing. And they kind of are Christmas tree sized, so I wrapped them up in some LED lights, and I've got them on a timer. And it's kind of festive and nice here. We haven't gotten any snow, but I'm super excited for the holiday season. I always kind of enjoy it. I've really enjoyed it in the last 5 or 6 years, when maybe more than that. Kimberly and I, a long time ago, said, if we do travel, we're going to travel because at the time we had our schedules were a little bit easier to we're more flexible with our schedules. And so we won't travel on the big holidays, so we'll see family kind of like away from the holidays. And that started the tradition with me going out to Portland to hang out with my nephew and my brother and that side of the family in early December, after Thanksgiving rush, but before the Christmas rush and before the New Year's rush and all that other stuff. So when you travel during off times, man, it's just so much better. And so, yeah, that's why Kimberly's going to be going to Oklahoma next week to go visit her family. And then we get to hang out and we just kind of stay in one spot. And we're usually here at the cabin, and it's just great. And I can get the big Christmas tree that I can cut, from around the corner. There's a tree farm around the corner from here, and it's just kind of adorable and amazing and fun and cool. And yeah, really looking forward to celebrating this year with her and with the dogs and the crazy cat who managed to not make a fuss. All the dogs. Oh, I should show you Gizmo before we call this a night. Who's been good, but he's wearing his holiday pajama outfit here. Look at that. There's like, oh, I thought they had snowmen on it, but I guess not. Yeah, he's kind of a hoot. I think he made it in the April show, so I thought it was worth seeing them. Whoop, knocking the mic, and Mookie's not going to be available because he's down on the floor being Mookie. So, anyways, folks, thanks so much for joining. Really, really appreciate you hanging out. This will be next week's podcast, so I've ruined that for you. But listen to it anyways. You might have missed something. Maybe you'll check out something on the flip side of things. So, have a wonderful rest of your night, or morning, or wherever you are, and enjoy the weekend as well. And we will see you next week for the pod. And we got some fun things coming for the end of the year. And of course, you already know what I'm doing in January. So take care, everyone.